This is going to be public comments. Do we have any?
We have one public speaker, Jason Panero.
Good afternoon, Joe and Ronnie. Nice to see you again. Several hours before my 32nd birthday. And I'm here today to demand some answers. First of all, I would love to see Jano Lieber to do several more frequent updates regarding East Side Access, Second Avenue Subway Phase 2, because we don't want to end up like we did on Phase 1, that this one right here, 6 months before Phase 1 opened, raised red flags, but the governor had to intervene to open it on New Year's Day 2017. We don't want that anymore. And we will want Penn Access to be a reality and Cortlandt Street open before Christmas. So it is time that the MTA pressures the Port Authority to let us open that station on time and let them know that we don't want AirTrain LaGuardia because it affects all MTA access, including the Casey's Dingle Depot and the Corona Yard. So I'll be raising as many red flags as possible. So I will end this month saying we have to do what we have to do.
Thank you. No further questions?
That concludes our public speakers.
Thank you. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the May 21st meeting. I'll move them. Do I have a second? Any questions, comments, changes? There being none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? They carry. Don, the committee work plan?
There's one change in the work plan because the CPOC committee was briefed on East Side Access 2 months ago. The next ESA briefing will be in September when MTACC is back presenting their projects.
Okay, thank you very much. Now to the quarterly MTA Capital Construction Company update. The first one is an update on Penn Station Access Project. Eve?
Good afternoon. Since we last met, we've been successfully advancing planning as well as pre-design activities on the Penn Access project. In this presentation, we'll be discussing the engineering, stakeholder engagement, as well as environmental planning. We've engaged in a competitive process to select the general engineering consultant. This process has included key stakeholders, including Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and Amtrak. The GEC base contract will include the preparation of 30% preliminary design documents. It will also have options for design build as well as design bid build project delivery. In addition to bringing the GEC on board, we've been working on track alignments. The preferred track alignment will become the basis of the engineering design. Based on the operations simulations, 2 viable alternatives have emerged that include 3-track and 4-track scenarios. Our next step will be to include CSX to discuss freight operations. Next slide, please. To advance the Penn Access program, Amtrak commitment to the project is essential. To memorialize this commitment, we are negotiating a memorandum of understanding. We'll have subsequent agreements, which will include a design phase agreement, construction, and access agreements. However, as we move the project ahead, issues between Amtrak and MTA need resolutions. Some of these issues include Amtrak resources. Their availability to support our design and construction is a key issue. In addition, there is talk about the Pelham Bay Bridge. Discussions have been raised about appropriate cost allocations and responsibilities regarding the bridge replacement. Recently, Amtrak has brought up a new scheduling requirement related to the upcoming reconstruction of the East River tunnels. On another front, we've been working actively with other stakeholders and interested parties. The project is receiving high-level support from Congressman Joseph Crowley and Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz. Later this week, we will meet with New York State Senator Louis Sepulveda. Next, please. On the environmental front, in March, we met with the FDA to update them on the project. The draft environmental assessment will be submitted to the FTA at the end of this summer. In addition to the environmental work, coordination with New York City, meaning DCP, DOT, and EDC, is ongoing. This will ensure that planning for future development and station access complements the MTA's investment. Over the next 6 months, we'll be working on the following items: to execute the Amtrak MOU, to execute the engineering consultant contract. We're also going to submit the draft environmental assessment to FTA. We're going to be activating the preliminary design and finalizing the alignments with CSX. This concludes my report.
Before we go on to the IC,
When you began, you mentioned a 3 or 4 track option. Are you talking about all the way from Shell interlocking to the Hellgate Bridge?
And then we would go to a, oh my goodness, we go to a 3-track
From there on.
From there on in.
From there on. Thank you.
any further questions?
Chairman, I believe I know the answer, but could you please refresh our recollections on the relative merits of the 3 and 4 track configurations and the cost?
Is it, am I on now? Okay. So interestingly, the cost is not extremely different between the 3 and the 4. Obviously, a 3-track railroad the entire way would have less track. However, there are more interlockings. We've done some preliminary cost evaluation, and it does seem that both the 3-track and the 4-track will be pretty much similar. The advantages of the 3-track is that it has the continuity that will allow for greater service reliability.
Oh, who has put the 4-track option on the table then?
Actually, the 4-track option has been on the table for quite a while. It's a recent advent that there is entertainment of a 3-track the whole way. At the outset, we weren't convinced that Amtrak would be amenable to a 3-track. However, they've expressed an interest in that because of the operational capabilities.
That's a very, very diplomatic answer.
The 4-track, I think, has to deal with the fact that Amtrak has been adamant in this entire process, though not completed yet, that there really not be any interference in their ability to keep their schedule, whatever that might be.
And just to add to that, however, the 3-track option is on the table because of the operation simulations that we've done, and they do have a level of comfort that it meets with their operational effectiveness.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes, Carl.
Just to state for the record that I'm recused in this matter.
Very well. Okay. There won't be a vote on this at all. No. The independent engineers report. Are we ready, Kent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. With this project in the pre-design phase, we just have one main observation to make at this point. The project team, I think, is properly focusing on completing their project implementation arrangements with Amtrak, as well as the environmental assessment. Both of these, we think, are important to the definition of the project for the start of preliminary design.
That's it? Okay, great. Now the update on the Second Avenue Subway Phase 2. Tim?
Good afternoon. For today's update, I'll cover the status of design, the environmental process, our federal funding application, and our community outreach efforts. Our design is progressing as planned with emphasis on lessons learned and cost containment. We're on schedule to complete extended preliminary engineering by third quarter of this year. We're also on schedule to complete the design-build contract documents for the structural shell and tunnel work and the final design documents for the advanced utility work. These will be completed during the first quarter of 2019. That plan that you see on this slide is just a representation of the utilities for the advanced utility work that we'll be encountering under that first contract and subsequently for the other contracts that deal with the structural work and the open cut construction, mostly on 2nd Avenue. Regarding the advanced utility works package, the main focus has been to optimize construction and avoid delays. In order to do that, we want to try and clear some of the interferences that we know the heavy civil construction will encounter right from the get-go when they first get out there. For instance, before they could build their supportive excavation walls for the cut and cover construction, they have to move sewers, they have to move gas mains outside the work zones between the subway structure and the buildings. Sometimes just doing that work, the sewer is relatively deep, adjacent to some of these older 4-story walk-ups. Sometimes that work itself will impact the buildings and cause some remediation work to need to be done. So when we do that, we'd like to go in and further that remediation work to maybe reinforce the building enough so that it could even withstand the impacts that are potentially created when we do the main civil work and the main structural work. Get in there once and try and get as much done the first time we get in rather than keep going back. Where we can take those opportunities, we will. And plus, we'll install some instrumentation, we'll install some more monitoring devices, and clear any other encroachments that we'll encounter on the sidewalks in advance of the main work. For the environmental process, we received comments from the FTA in March that caused us to change the reevaluation document from a tech memo to an EA. We made those changes and resubmitted the document in April. Last Friday, the FTA gave us the go-ahead to publish the EA for public comment. After the document is published, we'll follow it up with additional outreach meetings, document the comments, and report back to the FTA. We've already been actively keeping the community informed about the changes in the project since the 2004 FEIS and have held outreach meetings with Central and East Harlem communities with the FTA in attendance. The feedback from those meetings was positive. In fact, the plans that you see on this slide is a representation of some of the plans that we presented at those meetings, showing the street locations of the stations, as well as some of the critical items associated with each of those stations, such as the entrances and the ancillaries. The change from a tech memo to an EA has impacted our original goal to obtain the NEPA finding by this summer. That is shifted to the fall of this year. But because the FTA has turned around the review of the EA so quickly and agreed to continue the review of our New Starts funding application concurrently with the NEPA document, this doesn't cause a delay to the overall New Starts process and to the project. For the federal New Starts funding application, we're making good progress on the deliverables needed to complete the project development phase and expect to submit all required documents by the end of this year and request entry into the engineering phase. Once we're accepted into engineering, we'll continue advancing design to further refine cost and schedule and provide project management plans and third-party agreements that demonstrate our readiness to move the project into significant construction. Our overall goal is to obtain an FFGA by the end of 2020. Our early outreach efforts are ongoing and have been effective. We've had over 4,000 visitors to the CIC since opening in September. In addition to the previously mentioned community board meetings, we're meeting with many other groups, associations, and the public in general, and getting our message out in a variety of ways. One of those ways is by staging mobile pop-up information center events around the neighborhood. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
One bit of color, which is that last week, Andy Byford and I went up to 96th Street Station and spent a good 2 hours walking through and talking about the first phase of 2nd Avenue to get some of the lessons learned about how we might design differently and how we can anticipate some of the things that might make this, give us opportunities to make this a better, faster, and more efficient project.
Questions? There being none, the IEC report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make 2 points at this phase of the project's development. From our observations, the program is tracking well toward completion of its project development drawings and the environmental assessment by the end of this year, if not sooner. Secondly, we're looking forward to reviewing the baseline cost estimate and the schedule forecast now being developed by the project and probably available later in the year. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Now on to the progress report on the Long Island Railroad expansion. Mark?
Thank you. I've got 10 slides. The first 2 you've seen before, then we'll get into something new. My objective today is to give you a feel of the preparatory works that we're working on at the present time and some of our thinking as we head for construction start in the fourth quarter of this year. This slide you've seen before, it's really just intended to give you an overall reminder of what the project is. 9.8 miles of new third track between Floral Park and Hicksville. It's a design-build contract, and the contractor's third track constructors and the board approved it in December of last year. Again, you've seen this slide before. The list of activities on the left we're working on to complete in large part before we start construction in the fourth quarter. The list on the right are the sort of the main heavy activities that we were hoping to start at the end of the year. Our current primary activity that we can judge target on is the development of the design. It's the third on the list on the left. All the rest are support activities to get that design going. We are taking the view that our contractor, third track constructors, and ourselves are one team, and we're pushing to make sure that we can start construction in the end of the year. But there is some work going on site. These orange graphics are maybe a little hard to read at a different distance, but we're doing some contamination testing, we're doing some survey, we're doing some work at the stations. There's a lot of work going on to support the start of construction, and that'll continue until October. We haven't presented you a detailed schedule. Our objective is to present a detailed schedule towards the end of the year. What we do want to highlight is that we're taking advantage of the design-build process. It's a means and method process, and therefore our objective is not to force the design into a construction that may be constrained. What we're looking to do is to let the designer working for the design builder develop the design, let them develop their means and methods, and if necessary, go back and change the design. It's a key element of the design development that we let this happen. This is taking a little time, and we want to make sure we use the advantage of design build to the fullest. This is a schedule of what we're calling the design ready for construction release packages. There are 66 of them, sorry I forgot the number, with 3 due this summer. We're using this as a surrogate for progress until we get to the full design construction schedule. We'll report back on this every month so that you can see where we are as we advance the ready for construction packages. This is a project risk summary. We have 6 categories of risks. We have introduced a new category, which is a result of the work that was done by Jano on the East Side Access recently. When we look at the elements and factors that happened in that project, we realized that we can gather how do we manage ourselves better as a category of risk. Specifically, are we accounting for change? Are we holding our leaders responsible? Do we have indicators that demonstrate progress as we move along? It's a new category. We're getting into it with OCO. You'll hear more about this as we go, but the objective is to hold ourselves accountable as we move forward. Again, if I could make one comparison on this slide, external risks. East Side Access had one major external player, Amtrak. We have 50. The performance of those 50 entities is our performance. We are working extraordinarily closely with them, or we're hoping to work extraordinarily closely with them, and it's working very well to date. It is a factor that we must be prepared to put a lot of effort into, and we have a lot of dedicated resources at this stage to have to move that forward. Just some graphics to show that we are speaking to the public. We've had 100 meetings so far this year. What we've heard at those meetings is a very simple message of, are you meeting your commitments? Hence, we offer this second slide as a mechanism, the second last slide, I should say, as a mechanism to demonstrate how we're trying to demonstrate we are meeting the commitments. On the left is a very long list of the committee of the commitments in various categories. on the horizontal axis just the number of commitments in each category. You could pick any one of those, and you can see the design one, which is the very longest one, the project element for design. It's 106 commitments. We've said 106 times to those 50 bodies that we would let them have influence on the design. We are essentially holding ourselves accountable, and if you look at the colors, the blue are those commitments that we think we've met. The red or orange are the ones that we're hoping to meet before we start construction towards the end of the year, and the gray are the ones that we hope to meet or will meet during construction. So we'll report back on our progress on this mechanism in the future. And finally, if we just look ahead to the next year, while the schedule is not quite ready, we do believe we know in principle the big items that will start work. This graphic gives you a list of the 9 or 10 that we think are starting, be they 2 stations, 3 underbridges, and a parking structure. The order may not be quite right, the dates may not be quite right, but I offer this just to give an idea of the bigger picture that's coming up in the next 12 months. And that's the report. Thank you.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Pally.
I just want to thank you, Jano, and the team for the extensive community outreach, and I'll put that word in quotes, because as you can imagine, this is a very, very, very topical project on Long Island, felt by a lot of people, a lot of municipalities, many of which are not thrilled with it happening. I think that's not a fair understatement. But the communication from the group and MTA and the contractors has been very, very helpful so far. I can only hope that continues after somebody starts hitting something out there as opposed to just surveying something. But so far, I just want to let you know that I've received a significant amount of thanks for the efforts. It doesn't always mean everybody agrees with what you say, but at least they're appreciative of the fact that somebody is saying it to them in that regard. Thank you.
Earl?
A question on the previous slide, slide 9. These commitments, fulfilling these commitments, are these internally developed? Are these developed with the community? And these, I assume that within each category there are a multiple number of commitments.
Yeah. For example, I think we have 9 memorandums of understanding with various municipalities.
Right.
So we've, rather than report on those 9, we've gone into each of them and extracted what it means, and then created, I think it's 612 is our latest accumulation of those. So it gives us a much more concrete way of understanding and monitoring them. So it's come from those agreements.
So just to Mitch's point in terms of transparency and community being aware, are those 600 and whatever, those are known to the community too?
Yes, those are published on our website.
That's great.
Project, yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
On the slide that's on the screen now, where you have some details that say Floral Park Station, Carl Place Station, and Mineola Station. Yeah. In addition to the rearranging that's necessary to put a 3rd track through there, are other improvements happening to those 3 stations as well?
I think the Floral Park Station, we're just putting in elevators. There's no other improvements that I'm aware. The others are, with the exception of Hicksville, are full replacements.
Full replacements?
Yes.
Thank you.
Norman?
Yeah, with regard to the community, or actually communities, you're dealing with in the 50 different entities. Is there any sort of possibility of corralling these into some sort of ombudsman process where you can get some overall buy-in before somebody in one of these communities thinks they have a veto over the whole thing once again, as they have repeatedly in the past here? Is there some way to get the state government or county or something to pull them all together to herd the cats?
Yeah, we haven't quite got to that yet. We are hoping to have some sort of amalgamations of meetings, if I could call it that, coming up. I will offer that Nassau County, for example, in their supporting team, is gathering folks together for that purpose for us. A lot of the municipalities are coming to us in our site office and sort of realizing that Actually, we could get together on a whole bunch of things. So we're learning as we go along how to make it a little simpler. But they're all extraordinarily active and involved at this stage. So we may make it more efficient, but we're not there yet.
Thank you. Any further questions? The independent engineers report. Mohammed?
Good afternoon. The IEC participated in the risk workshop and is satisfied with the risk assessment process. In addition to the internal project management risks, other top near-term project risks are property acquisition, utility agreements, and performance of stakeholders. Finally, the IEC has observed that the agency is making significant effort to mitigate each of these risks. I will answer any questions which you may have.
Any questions? Okay. There being none, progress report on Cortlandt Street.
Good afternoon. Cortlandt Street Station remains on schedule for revenue service in October of this year, with substantial completion in December. We are currently working with no remaining schedule contingency, but have sufficient cost contingency to complete the project within the current budgeted amount. We are now at a critical juncture of this project where we are transitioning from major construction activities to a focus on testing and commissioning. I provided some detailed highlights of progress since we last met in your packet that is also included in the next few slides. Of particular note for the platform level is the delivery and installation of fare control turnstiles. At the mezzanine level, UPS systems have been installed and tested. Chilled water was completed and tested at both fan plants. And the original normal and reserve electrical distribution rooms have been disconnected by Con Edison and demolished at the street level. So this leads us to what is critical, and that remains the testing and commissioning of the fan plants, communication systems, and vertical circulation elements. That being said, we're monitoring the critical systems against the schedule and tracking concerns. A couple more slides. Forward. One more. That's it. So that being said, we're monitoring the critical systems against the schedule and tracking our concerns. Right now, HVAC and our smoke management systems testing is contingent upon Port Authority demolition activities at the north and south fan plants. The south fan plant is in process and expected to be completed this week. Similarly, the north fan plant has begun and is also expected to be completed this week. If you remember, this used to be one of our primary risks was Port Authority interferences. These are the final two interferences of Port Authority that will be resolved, and we should be moving forward very well. Also on that slide, by the way, is elevator number three, which is also a critical issue. That's the elevator at the intersection of Vesey and Liberty Street, which is Vesey and Greenwich Street, which is our ADA accessibility. I'll discuss that a little bit further because that's one of our major risks. On the previous slide, right there, our communication system testing is currently on schedule. We only have one outstanding item remaining with the radio system. We've received approval from New York City DOT to relocate a radio antenna on top of one of the light poles adjacent to the site. This will allow us to avoid a redesign of the foundation, which conflicted with the security bollard design as installed by the Memorial Plaza. So as mentioned earlier, elevator 3 is critical to opening the station. Due to the fact that we were dependent upon Port Authority completing the platform level and street slabs at their west bathtub vehicle access in order to begin constructing our elevator machine room, we decided to find an alternate permanent location for this machine room. A new machine room has been designed in a space under one of our north mezzanine stairs, which is sufficient in size to meet the requirements necessary for a permanent location. Moving this to the new alternate location allowed us to proceed with elevator number 3 without any dependency on the Port Authority work. Although critical, we have negotiated an accelerated schedule with the contractor for completion of this elevator prior to station opening. This work, although substantial, will be within our allocated contingency amounts. The other major area of concern remains and will remain the progress of the contractor. Although productivity continues at an increased pace, this pace must be maintained throughout the remainder of the project in order to continue to adhere to the aggressive schedule presented by the contractor and MTA CC. Successful quality control implementation will also be critical to meeting the schedule for testing and commissioning activities, as the aggressive schedule does not allow for excessive rework. We have been working with New York City transit groups at all levels to address concerns as early as possible through accelerated reviews, site walkthroughs, and joint meetings with the contractor. This coordination and involvement of New York City Transit has been extremely helpful in addressing our schedule concerns. From much quicker turnaround of submittals than required by the contract, to assistance in resolving conflicts in the field, to scheduling, testing, commissioning activities with little advance notice, our success at this point is largely due to the partnership we have received from New York City Transit. This partnership and early resolution of issues should also help us to achieve a smoother than usual transition from construction to acceptance by the user groups. Finally, to highlight productivity to date, I have updated a slide from the previous presentation to show that our expenditures continue to be on pace to complete the project by December with opening in October. However, as mentioned, this pace has to be maintained in order to make the opening and substantial completion dates. And this concludes my report.
Any questions? Yes, Susan?
Well, the number 3 elevator is at Vesey and Greenwich is in the same place that you had always planned it. It's just the machine room that you've tucked under the stairs?
Yes, the elevator is still in the same location. The elevator machine room, which used to be on north of our elevator in the area that's being built right now by Port Authority,
right.
It has moved into our north mezzanine area, which will allow us to build the machine room at the same time we're building the elevator and have it complete by project opening.
It looks like there's a stairway there on Greenwich now. Is that your stairway?
Trying to think of which stairway you're talking.
It's blocked off, though.
So there are temporary stairs in that area right now, which are within the West Bath vehicle access. Most of that is construction access for Port Authority. Our permanent stairs will be closer to Greenwich Street within the steel structure that currently exists out there.
Okay.
We will still be installing some of those stairs. However, there may be a temporary access to those stairs. They'll only be used for emergency egress and fire department access.
And you're going to get this done in time?
We'll get this done by October.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Diane, the IEC report.
Good afternoon. My full report begins on page 40 of your CPOC book. To summarize, many of the major issues we had earlier on this project have been addressed. The two main concerns that remain are, first, the completion of Elevator 3 at the VC Street Station entrance. This issue was covered in detail in Dan's report. The other main risk is the completion of an aggressive testing and commissioning program ahead of revenue service. Significant user group and contractor resources are required to meet the plan, and there is little room for regressive retesting if there are excessive failures. And that concludes my summary.
Questions?
I add
Yes,
something? Definitely in past projects, we've found that the commissioning and operational aspects have been a stumbling point for us. Are you comfortable with what the team is doing in working with transit at this point? Do you think it's sufficient?
I'm comfortable with the amount of resources I'm seeing on this project for testing and commissioning. Dan can speak to this better, but I'm being assured that they're going to have all of the safety and health systems tested and accepted before station opening. And if you look at my report, I have a chart that shows the amount of testing that has to happen over the next 3 months, and they're trending on plan right now, but the issue is they have to increase the amount of tests a lot. It's going to be the main activity happening on the station work over the next 3 months, and they just have to keep the quality up and pass.
You have the resources to do that, Dan?
Yes, we've been currently meeting all of our testing and commissioning deadlines. In fact, we've been beating them in most situations. As I was saying in the presentation, from this point on, really the bulk of the work right now is testing and commissioning. So that will increase significantly from this point forward. As I was saying earlier, too, I have to give a lot of credit to New York City Transit. They are exceptional in helping us address these testing and commissioning requirements with little notice. A lot of it involves review of plans. They've been turning those plans around very quickly, and then scheduling the testing. We've been scheduling it much quicker than would typically be the case, and we've been
just to add a tiny bit of color. I think I said to you last time we were here at CPOC that we wanted to make this project's, the opening and the handover and startup a model, maybe a counter model of some things that happened in the past. And so far, again, we're not all the way there. We've been able to do that, and a lot of it is the cooperation that we've gotten from Andy and all of the folks at Transit. I mean, last week we had another one of these check-in meetings where we have 50-plus people in the room and going over literally every system and every discipline to make sure that folks on all sides are comfortable with the progress that's being made, and it's been very good. So especially to my partner, Mr. O'Grady at CPM, but also, to the rest of the transit disciplines, we're very grateful, and we're, as the IEC said, very dependent on that continued cooperation to bring it in.
I've asked the staff for a tour, and I'd like to extend it to members of the committee as well, probably closer to the end of the summer, the very, very first week in September, to take a look at it. It'll be a month away from opening, and I think it'll be a much better look in. So we'll try to coordinate those dates. All right, on to the new fare payment system update. Al Poutre.
Today's presentation is a follow-up to the new fare payment system procurement briefing that was presented to the board's Finance Committee in October of 17. We'll be discussing the planned replacement of New York City Transit's MetroCard and Long Island Railroad and Metro North fare payment systems. The new fare payment system is a design-build project broken down into 5 individual phases. It will be a fully integrated fare collection system for New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North. It will have the capability to expand to other transportation agencies and affiliates. The system will use a shared common back end for all 3 agencies. The system includes capabilities to manage New York City Transit's flat fares and the railroad's distance-based fares. The new fare payment system will accept bank-issued, transit-enabled, open payment, contactless, credit, debit cards, mobile payment devices such as smartphones and watches, and closed-loop MTA-issued cards, as well as optical barcodes. This slide details the 5 project phases, each representing a major project milestone. This is the same chart I presented to the board for the procurement briefing in October. I'm displaying it again to illustrate the specific phases. As you can see, this project is moving along at a very aggressive timeline to build out NFPS capabilities and features and deliver this system quickly to our customers. This contract was awarded on November 1st, 2017. I am pleased to report almost 8 months into this multi-phase project, we are on schedule. The budget for this program is $620 million, including $34.5 million in risk reserve. We are on budget at 6% complete, which is based on contractual milestones achieved. Because this is a design-build project, each phase involves extensive discussions and reviews by key stakeholders as we build out what the new system will look like. CDR, or Conceptual Design Review Working Sessions with Kubrick, were completed in December of 2017. The PDR, or Preliminary Design Review Working Sessions for Phase 1, were completed last month. Both the conceptual and preliminary design review sessions involved the active participation and feedback of over 50 transit staff members representing stakeholder departments from New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North Railroad. Phase 1 subway stations are on the Lexington Avenue line from 42nd Street and Grand Central down to Atlantic Avenue, Barclays Center in Brooklyn. In addition to serving Midtown and the downtown financial district, the segment selected serves Metro North customers on the north end and Long Island Railroad customers on the south end. We have received commitments from the major banks in the New York metro region to begin replacing credit debit card stock with transit-enabled contactless cards to coincide with the new fare payment system's phased rollout. Business rules to support NFPS Phase 1 are complete. These rules tell the system how to categorize, process, and charge fares. Cubic is programming back-end systems based on these rules. Station field surveys started in January of 2018. These surveys determine the layout of the conduit required to finish our communication network. The teams have completed 415 surveys out of 941 locations, which translates into a 44% completion rate. Conduit installation work has been completed at 25 fare control areas: the Atlantic Avenue Barclays Stations Complex, Nevin Street, Bowling Green, and Wall Street. Much of this work is not noticeable to our customers. Validator installations, which our customers will see, start in the fourth quarter of this year. Development of the new fare payment system mobile app and website features are underway, providing basic account management functionality during Phase 1. The SBS pilot is on schedule for deployment on up to 175 buses starting in November of 2019. This pilot will measure boarding times and test onboard validation devices that will be used by the Eagle teams during inspections. During the next 6 months, the following will occur. The program management plan, which integrates MTA tasks with Cubic scheduled project tasks, is being revised to align with New York City Transit's Fast Forward plan. The final design review working sessions with Cubic for Phase 1 are scheduled from July 30th to August 10th of 2018. Phase 1 bus routes will be finalized in conjunction with New York City Transit's bus rerouting plan for Staten Island. That's slated for implementation in August of 2018. Station field surveys for conduit layouts will finish in September of 2018. The physical installation of conduit will continue into 2019 and be completed by February of 2020. Initial staging of the back-end system will occur in August of 2018. This production version of the back-end system will follow in October of 2018. Contactless validator manufacturing begins this month in Tennessee. During Phase 1, Cubic will be installing 500 subway validators and 600 bus validators. The installation of these validators will begin in the subway in October of 2018. Installations on buses will begin on Staten Island in the first quarter of 2019. Shown here is an example of a validator installed on a vertical bus rail. System integration testing involves connecting components to verify the new system works from end to end. This entails linking validators, installing software, and establishing connections via the comms network to the test region of the back end. This testing will be complete in December of 2018. As in all projects, we do have several risks. The new fare payment system contract includes a requirement to interface with the New York City Transit bus radio system currently under development. The NFPS schedule preceded the completion schedule for the bus radio system, so an option of $19.2 million was included in the contract to procure bus hardware if needed to mitigate this schedule difference. However, we have developed an alternative solution that eliminates the need for any additional components and avoids exercising this $19.2 million option. The project calls for redundant data centers, which will house the new account-based fare payment systems. Delays in the design and programming of back-end applications could affect Phase 1 implementation. However, utilizing a phased approach mitigates this risk by allowing complete testing and system verification on a smaller scale to ensure that issues are resolved without significant customer-facing problems. Cubic is already simulating transactions in the back end well in advance of system deployment. This should significantly reduce the risk or chance of schedule drift. There are 2 pending change orders. The first one is paratransit, which I discussed at the Finance Committee briefing in October. This change order is pending a cost estimate, which is due from Cubic this month. There is no anticipated impact on the existing project schedule. Based on New York City Transit's bus action plan, which calls for all-door boarding on all bus routes, we are working with the Department of Buses on a scope of work which will be completed by the end of this month. Our intent is to implement this additional work without impact to the existing project schedule. That completes this report.
Questions? Andrew?
A couple of questions. If Phase 1 is May of 2019 and Phase 2, and that's just selected the Lexington line, for instance, to Barclays from 125th Street, and Phase 2 is October of 2020, does that mean another 420 stations will be made ready within that 1 year?
The actual rollout for Phase 1, we light up 500 turnstiles and 600 buses, literally. But the build-out of the infrastructure continues beyond that. We're limiting the initial installation to a small pilot to make certain that we don't have any issues, and we're able to work them out in a phased approach. So the infrastructure continues. So we'll actually have more stations completed as we end Phase 1 and begin Phase 2. But your analysis is correct. At the end of Phase 2, the entire system will be wired up and lit.
And during the pilot in Phase 1 on the Lex line, will intersecting lines be turned on, at least their turnstiles, for instance, in a Grand Central or in a Fulton Center?
As an example, like at the Fulton Center, all the adjacent arrays will also have validators that will be connected to the system.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to visualize how this will actually work in Phase 1. These validators will replace the existing token or
no, the validators will be installed on the front of the turnstiles, and there are no tokens. What we'll have is a swipe block from the Metro card. The swipe block from the Metro card will remain in place.
That much I know, that there are no tokens.
Just to be clear, Metro card runs in parallel with new fare payment systems from beginning to end.
Right.
So this project ends in 2023, at which time Metro card will be decommissioned. Until such time as Metro card is decommissioned, it will run side by side, much like we did with tokens when we introduced Metro card, which stayed around for almost 10 years. We're not going to do it quite that long this time.
So the validators will be on the front of the turnstile?
That's correct. They'll be in the very front. There's a facsimile, a facial plate that's bolted to the front of the turnstile. It's stainless steel, and it looks very seamless. And it'll just look like it'll look like the front of the turnstile. You won't really notice it as an add-on. And the swipe block will remain on top of the turnstile.
If you look at page 48 of the presentation, and if we can go back 4 or 5 slides.
I saw the validator, right.
If you go to slide 3, if you look at the second slide under Phase 2, you can see where the validator...
I see. And then we will, when the system is fully operable, will one have to use their card to exit the system as well as enter it?
No, the system is not a distance-based system, so there is no need to tap out, so you'll only tap in.
Only tap in. And when we get, as New Yorkers, or anybody in the country, I guess, how will credit cards be replaced? Will we have to ask for them, or will they be...
So we've met with all the major banks and credit card issuers, and we've had at least 5 or 6 meetings with them. We have one next week. We have one this week with the major credit card issuer, and they have all said the same thing. It's the chicken and the egg. They want to issue the cards. They need a purpose for the cards. The validators are the purpose. Once the validators are in our system, the banks want to coincide their rollout of their products and their new contactless chip cards with our installation. So they're going to happen simultaneously, and you should begin to see those cards in your wallet literally within the next 4 or 5 months. Credit card companies and banks.
Carl, they're already out. Here's a card that I've received from Citibank, and it already has, it's built in. It's got, you can see this, it has this design that looks like...
So my credit card has a little chip on it, right?
No, not good enough.
That's not it.
Not good enough.
You need that.
Not good enough.
Not good enough. It's not Wi-Fi. This is Wi-Fi. And a chip. I got both. You get both.
And we'll just start getting them.
Yeah.
That's correct.
They normally retire most banks, I think, every 2 years.
Correct.
So, over the next 2 years, they will be replacing. And that's been the commitment on the part of the banks.
And how will they know, for example, whether you're half fare or a
Fair policy is going to be subject of a whole different, beyond the actual implementation of the hardware, we need to incorporate a whole fair policy issue that is a board-related function as well, and that will start up shortly.
So if you're a senior now and you have a half fare card,
So until such time as we issue our own closed-loop product, which will be under Phase 3 in February of 21, until such time as we do that, the current half-fare system will be based on MetroCard. But at that time, under Phase 3, we will phase the MetroCard portion of that out and begin to roll in the exact same technology, but based on a chip-based contactless product. And we will register our current cardholders and transition them over into the new fare payment system. And it's very important to understand that all of our current policies and practices that the MetroCard provides today, most importantly, reduced fare, senior citizens, the disabled community, none of those things are eliminated, not any of them. I want to be very clear on that. Everything that MetroCard does today, the new system will do at a minimum.
right, but if I understand what you're saying, for example, me as a senior will not be able to take advantage of the contactless card
Not until 2021. In February of 2021, we issue our own closed-loop product, and it will be a smart card-based MetroCard, so to speak. Once that product is issued, we will transition you from your current reduced fare card, Metro version, into a smart card.
Okay.
Susan?
You used the term tap, which suggests that you have to do what we do at PATH, which is touch our card to the reader. But if it's Wi-Fi, can we just wave it in front of the sensor like we do here?
So in order to ensure that only one tap per person, when I say tap, you have to get the card within a couple of millimeters of the reader.
Okay.
You don't actually have to touch it, but say within an inch. Typically, that would be the reading level. A slight, an inch or less would work. But you want to make certain that two cards don't get what's called card clash. So
That's
you want
my question. That's why I'm confused. Lots of people carry more than one credit card. And, okay, so for us seniors, we're in good shape. Well, maybe we're not, because if I get... Well, no, we're not in good shape, period.
We're in bad shape until then.
But if I have a card that is red, but I'm a senior, how do I know that it's not reading my card?
So the senior citizens, in order to take advantage of a half fare, are going to have an account-based. All these cards are account-based. Now, it's either an anonymous account or a registered account. So what you're going to do as a senior is, you have a senior citizen MetroCard today.
Right.
So you registered that account.
Right.
They took your picture and they registered your account.
Yep.
It's connected to a serial number on a MetroCard. That will be exactly the same. That's an account-based system. We're going to duplicate that.
Yeah, I get that. That's not my question.
So you want to make
my
sure.
question is, my credit card gave me a Wi-Fi card.
So when the system sees your credit card and it sees the reduced fare card, it knows the reduced fare account number because it's in our system, so it only charges that card.
How are the Long Island Railroad and Metro North monthly and weekly passes to be incorporated into the system?
So in terms of commutation passes, the monthly ticket is the most difficult ticket for us to address. There's several ways we focused on it. I've most recently briefed both Phil and Kathy on this. And until a system can be developed where we can read a monthly ticket as fast as you can visually scan it, and there is no system that can do that. You would have to increase your train crew sizes and your manpower significantly. So the theory on this is that your monthly commutation pass will likely be a flash pass on the railroad side. It will be a smart card, and it will be valid and interoperable with New York City Transit, but it likely will still remain as a flash pass. Now, as far as the weeklies and the dailies and all of those cards, because the volume, 80% of your riders at peak time are monthly ticket holders.
That was that's my point.
So I could develop a system very easily to scan all your cards, because that's what we're going to do for your weeklies and your dailies. We're going to use an onboard sales validation device to scan those cards. I could do that for all of them, but you need a lot more manpower to do it.
So as a result of that, the monthly ticket holder is still going to be required to show the ticket to the conductor, as
Well,
they do now.
You have options. You also have the e-tix option.
Right.
And I'm going to, New Fair Payment Systems is issuing an e-tix 2.0 in February of 21, and that will be integrated into the cubic system, and it'll be totally interoperable between New York City Transit and both railroads. So that's always another option, and you're up to about 25% of your customers participating in that program now, and I'm hoping that grows. I think that is a very good option. I think your customers like it, so I believe that's one way. The other way is to continue to use, listen, your customers like the fact that they can fall asleep and hang their ticket on their chest, and you can validate it just by walking in and walking out. You don't have to wake them up. So there's other things we're looking at. Fortunately, this is a design-build project, and the time when I need to implement this technology is not here yet. And we're even looking at other technologies as well. And Phil's talked to me extensively about using ultra-wideband. That's like a Bluetooth on steroids type thing. And we've looked at many different other options. So I have a solution today that definitely works, but we're still opening doors and investigating. So that's my answer.
So the goal is, if necessary, to use the current, a modification of the current system.
Correct.
The hope is to find a better system moving forward that would eliminate the need to use the current system in some fashion.
That's correct. But at the very least, we will have an interoperable ticket that will be a smart card on one side and a flash pass potentially on the other.
So when they go to the subway, they get treated as if they're a subway rider in that context. They just can't be treated that way on the commuter rail at the moment.
Unless we wanted to change the way in which you do business.
We could do that too.
You could.
Yes.
That's possible.
Right. Because, I mean, you know, there are a number of us, including myself, who are becoming concerned over the fact that the distance-related measurements on the commuter rail systems are becoming outlandish, and I could come up with other words, but that's the best word I could come up with at the moment. And we end up with a system where we have designed a public policy statement in the city, which I'm not objecting to, where we treat everybody the same. You pay one fare, whether you go 1 mile or, I don't know what the longest trip is, I'm sure Andrew could tell me, 22 miles, okay, whatever it is, because the likelihood is that the people with the lower income take the longest trip. A very good public policy initiative. The same issue now is in the suburbs. The lower income individuals live the furthest away from the city center, travel the longest, and yet pay significantly more in fares.
Well,
that, to me, is something which has outlived its usefulness and is a situation that I think is very important to discuss as we move forward with the next fare discussion, because the lower income individuals who, because of housing costs in the suburbs, live the furthest out, pay the largest fare.
You can tell me how to program the system, and I'll do it exactly as you like it. That's above my pay grade.
I can tell you lots of things. I'm not sure the chairman would agree at the moment, but I could come up with lots of ideas. That I will do. But Mr. Chairman, I'm not. I was not being facetious. I'm being serious in that context. That
I'm still thinking about Bluetooth on steroids.
Yeah, but this is a situation where that public policy issue is impacted by the fare collection system.
The fare policy discussion that we need to have and will begin shortly is going to be very complex, and we have to also incorporate fares. All kinds of issues need to be put in over time. So,
thank you.
Understood. Susan, yes, and then Norman.
I'd like to point out that whenever we're talking to a project manager who's doing a construction job, we keep beating on that person that you've got to have communication. you better have a really good communication program to explain this to our riders, because it's so complex for each individual that they're going to need a little bit of a tutorial. So I hope that's somewhere in the works as well.
We have worked very carefully with our other stakeholders, and New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, Metro North all have stakeholders embedded in our project, and we've already started a frequently asked questions list that we can begin to develop. And other properties that have done this, for instance, in Chicago and in London, have struggled mightily with that communication. And it all stems basically from knowledge of our own base first. Our own employees have to be our leads on this, and we're going to form CAT teams, customer assistance teams. And in the future, the railroad clerks, the station agents are going to come out of the booth. So we've got a lot of different things that we can use to leverage that communication. Our website, but you're 100% right. It sounds a little more complicated than it is because I'm just not that good at explaining it. There's people better at this than me.
Susan, the communication side of this is extremely important, and a lot of the communication of what we do here is changing, and we're very aware that, you know, as we make this change, this is a lot more complex than going from tokens to MetroCard, a lot more. But we also have different new vehicles to also use, and the internet and various other ways of doing it. We will keep that in mind. Commissioner Ferrer, I'm sorry, it was Norman's next.
Mr. Chairman, just to put it in context, when we first started talking about this, the idea was on our device to be able to manage our accounts, to be able to pay a fare, to be able to see train schedules. The whole thing was supposed to come together in an all-enveloping technology. I presume that's still the vision for this.
That absolutely is the vision, and the part of it will be released shortly with my MTA. The date on that? Not yet. We're still in beta form. I use it. It gives me directions as to where to go. It is very good, so you're using it. So, you know, that would then also have a component that would also be able to make your payment and charge and have your barcode. All of that will be in one place.
So that meet your new countdown clock, meet your new transit, whatever, bank, meet your fare payment, it's all here.
Yeah, meet the person sitting next to you, right? Okay, fine.
That too.
All right. Norman.
Yeah, will we still be able to jump the turnstile?
Not if I could get you.
Well, facetiousness aside, and it's never too far aside with me, do you foresee that this will be easier or more difficult to beat the fare on the buses? I mean, with the rear door boarding that already occurs is problematic. And, you know, it just occurs to me, I don't know, I couldn't see the turnstile there too well. I don't know if mechanically you'll be able to get through it so quick, but do you think it'll be easier or harder to beat the fare?
Actually, it'll be exactly the same, depending upon what enforcements we have in place. The turnstiles are not being replaced, so the exact same scenarios exist in the future that exist today. As far as old door boarding goes, depending upon Eagle Team enforcement, you actually could have lower fare evasion. So that depends upon what level of enforcement we put behind it.
So you're dependent on human beings to...
Whenever you have old door boarding, you're allowing people to board basically on the honor system. It's not a proof of payment system. It's a system that depends on spot checking, and the spot checking determines the compliance. If you don't think you're going to be ever spot checked, you're probably not going to pay. So those are the things that you have to balance.
Thank you very much.
From a throughput point of view, will you have to line up your bank-issued card and/or MTA-issued card and/or phone exactly on target on that eye? And will this cause lines while people get it in the exact right position? How forgiving is that Wi-Fi?
So the NFC, near-field communication, has a specification to make every transaction within 500 milliseconds, which is a half a second. And we're actually testing the validators as just right now we're doing some preliminary testing. And one of the things we're looking at is the barcode. The barcode, a paper barcode, and that theoretically in the future might be it will be our solution for single ride tickets. So that's a very low volume, but nevertheless, it still has to have that same level, and they're tweaking the software right now to make certain that it hits that target. But the NFC stuff, and the barcode displayed on a phone, they're already hitting that target.
Okay, thanks.
The IEC report on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. My report for the Fair Payment System Project, NFPS, starts on page 53 of your CPOC book. NFPS project is on budget. Currently, there is a slight delay in some interim milestones, which in the opinion of IEC can be recovered. Therefore, project completion remains on schedule. As all other large and complex systems integration projects, there are risks of costs and schedule delays associated with this project. Through risk assessment workshops and meetings conducted by IEC with the project team and the stakeholders before and after the contract award, we identified the major risks to the project as well as mitigation strategies. IEC continues to meet with the project team on a regular basis and discuss and update risks, their status, and mitigation actions. Major risks are included in the report. One such risk is that the major credit card companies have not yet mandated in the United States that their member banks issue contactless credit debit cards with the required features for contactless transit fair payment. While it is believed that the credit card companies will eventually issue such cards, the project team will continue to discuss this issue with the major brands as well as other card issuers in the New York metro area. And we will be closely monitoring the progress and working with the team going forward. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for the IEC? Okay, there being none, we are now, Ronnie, the capital program status report.
Thank you. The commitment and completion report begins on page 56. As you know, this year the agencies plan on making 43 major commitments totaling $7.3 billion. Through May, the MTA made 14 major commitments, as well as committed 2.4 versus 2.9 billion. But by year end, the MTA forecast meeting or exceeding its 2018 commitments goal. In terms of completions, the agencies plan this year to complete 39 major programs, totaling $6.3 billion in completions. Through May, the MTA has achieved 3 major completions, and while 5 are delayed, they are still expected to be achieved this year. And through May, the agency has completed $1.1 billion versus $1.7 billion, but does forecast meeting or exceeding its completion goals this year. Thank you.
Don, the first quarter 18 traffic light reports.
Thank you. The Capital Core Program traffic light report begins on page 65. A total of 302 projects were reviewed in the first quarter, 69 in design, 233 in construction. Of those projects, 63% are designated green, 29% yellow, and 8 red. For each of the 25 core projects designated red, that's the 8%, the agencies prepared a report, a variance report stating the problem and the corrective action. The Capital Sandy Program traffic light report begins on page 98. A total of 88 projects were reviewed in the first quarter, 10 in design, 19 in post-design to construction, 59 in construction. Of the 88 projects, 74%, a total of 65 were designated green, 18%, 16 were yellow, and 8%, 7 projects were designated red. And as with the core report, the 7 Sandy projects designated red are in the book, a variance report stating the problem and the corrective action. If there's no questions, I'll quickly move on to the quarterly capital change order report, which is in your book starting on page 113, and it's in your book for information purposes. This concludes those reports.
Are there any questions?
So it's wonderful news that next Sunday Clark Street Tube reopens on weekends. When is the Rutgers Tube work scheduled for? Do we have a date?
John's there.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, you wouldn't do them together.
And RC's next.
Yep.
Right, not together. Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. See you all Wednesday morning, 9 a.m.
Thank you.